What's up, Gator Nation? Zach Albaverdi and Nick Del Toro here. Welcome to the latest Gators Online Show, and we've got a lot to discuss on today's episode. No football game to preview, unfortunately, but a lot of football talk to be had, and we'll be joined on this episode by Tate Casey, UF sideline reporter and former Gators tight end, to get his take on the 2023 season, as well as ours. Nick gave his at Gators Online today. If you want to go check that out, as well as all the coverage that we've had this week. No chance to catch your breath, Nick.
No, it was. I ran into some people who were like, "Oh, there's no game this week, so you must be getting some time off." And I was like, "Oh, sweetie, no." Oh, sweetie, no.
I wish there was a game this week.
Yeah, I'd love to be in Atlanta right now. Would love to be in Atlanta. Would have probably been an easier week in Atlanta than it has been in Gainesville. But this is what we signed up for, Zach.
No, it is, and we appreciate everybody that signed up to Gators Online this week. We had our silly season sale, which was a smashing success. Shout out to all the Florida fans that signed up. We got the second most signups in the On3 Sports Network. So everybody that's new to Gators Online, welcome aboard. All the ones that have been here from the start or joined along the way, we appreciate everybody who has stayed through this long 2023 season. But now some real action is happening now that the portal is getting ready to heat up. And look, if you're not subscribed to Gators Online, if you missed our silly season sale, you can get in the door still for just $1. $1. You can get all the latest from the recruiting trail, from the transfer portal, draft declarations, which we're going to talk about on today's show, and everything happening the sprint to signing day. And, of course, coaching carousel. We've got some coaching changes to talk about as well. But, Nick, we can start on a positive note, I guess. So we got to, I guess, lead off with the big news of the day, and that is Graham Mertz returning.
Yeah, I don't think
2024.
I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that was, on our boards. I'd kind of said, I don't think Graham Mertz is in the top 10 quarterbacks for this draft class. It's a loaded draft class. Anthony Richardson left because he looked Anthony Richardson, a lot of fans are like, he can improve his draft stock if he comes back. And then you look at the draft class that is going to be out this year, and it's tough. It's a lot of really talented dudes. I think Graham's making the best decision for himself. And coincidentally, that just is also the best decision for the Gators. I wrote about that today as well. But I think the biggest thing it gives you is stability and a great example and mentor for DJ Lagway. Make no mistake about it. DJ Lagway is the future of the Florida Gators football program. And you're going to get a guy in Graham Mertz who's 23 years old, over 43 starts in his career. How do you watch film? How do you go about practice? How do you take care of your body after practice? How are you taking care of your body from Sunday to Friday so that you can play on Saturday? And especially a quarterback like DJ who's going to be running and getting hit. These are things that one, you get to ease DJ into playing. And then you get to have him watch somebody who's been doing it now. I think it'll be Graham's sixth year. Be doing it for 6 years to be able to help you learn and acclimate. I think it's huge for Florida, huge for DJ Lagway.
And I think all along this was the hope of Billy and the staff when they landed Graham in the transfer portal. They knew he had 2 years of eligibility. They, I'm sure, hoped and were counting on him maybe playing well enough and as well as he did. But he did put himself in a position where he had a decision to make. But it was just as stacked as the draft class is, as he said in his video, unfinished business. I don't think that he wants to end his college career on the note that he did. And also, too, I still think that there is more that he can do to improve his draft stock. He really did a lot this past year and now being able to put 2 years together on tape, and especially depending on what happens on offense, and that'll be a conversation for another segment. But look, with Max Brown deciding to transfer, which we'll get into, I think that even created more importance, I think, of getting Graham back, because if you lost Max and you lost Graham, Florida was really going to be portal hunting for a quarterback, which they might still do for depth purposes. But now you've got your starter for 2024, you've got your future for 2024, and he's able to kind of bridge that gap. And you don't have to put it all on DJ year one as a true freshman in that daunting 2024 schedule. As much as you Florida fans out there want to see DJ Lagway, you don't want him to start as a true freshman on that slate. You just don't. I mean, God bless the kid if he can do it and goes out there and plays well. But I think more than likely that would be tough sledding on the true freshman. And that's not how they want him starting his career. He is able to now ease into playing time, learn from Graham, not have all the pressure on him right away, and have a year under his belt before he's the guy.
And I think I was told that Graham had kind of kept this very tight, close. So I don't think Max Brown knew for certain one way or the other what Graham was going to do. But Max is not a dummy. You look and you think, hey, Graham probably comes back. They've got their guy for next year. They've already recruited over me, and maybe if you're not, as a 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, you probably don't think that, but you have to think, if you're being realistic, they view that they've recruited over me. Mm-hmm. And I need to go somewhere where I can play, because it's not going to be here.
Yeah. And, unfortunately for Brown, he really only gets a little taste of what it was like to be a quarterback for the Gators. But I think, to your point,
Nick, depending on how you play, that taste can be bitter, sour, can sting, can be sweet.
Yeah, I think that maybe he feels like he was able to show enough on the road at Missouri, and at least in the early stages of that FSU game to get an opportunity at another spot. But like you alluded to, Nick, he saw the writing on the wall, and I think if he had an inkling that Graham was going to return, that didn't bode well for his chances of playing time. So I get it, and that'll, of course, force Florida to potentially have to look into the transfer portal now for another quarterback. I don't think it would come from the high school ranks, but if Jack Miller decides to move on, or whatever he decides to do with his future, I think the expectation there would be that the Florida would have to look for some more depth from the transfer portal, whether that would be now before the start of the spring semester or after spring ball. Who knows? But I do think at this point you're not necessarily going out to have to get a starter per se. It'll be interesting to see what options are out there and what Billy decides to go after. But I do think with Max leaving, though, you do need to create some depth now, because there's a possibility that you could go into 2024 with just 2 scholarship quarterbacks, which is not enough.
No, that's not enough. I think at this point I'd be more surprised if Jack Miller were on the team in 2024 than if he ends up being a graduate transfer. It is my understanding that he would need to graduate and be a graduate transfer, since he already used the portal. So that puts you at 2 scholarship quarterbacks. I think Florida 100% needs to get a third. Not like it would be cool if they did. Needs to get a third scholarship quarterback. I don't know what you're going to get. I mean, you've got Parker Leasy, who's just a freshman, but not a scholarship kid. So there is a little bit of depth there, but you want 4 scholarship quarterbacks. And with what's happening, remember,
you had Micah Leon this year too, so he was basically served as that.
Micah Leon was the backup quarterback against Florida State. You were twisted Max Brown ankle away from Kings of Leon playing in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium.
Yeah, it's and when you think about it, man, they've had a lot of attrition at the quarterback position, not just under Napier, but I mean, even dating back to Dan and the cycles of quarterbacks that they've signed. Many of the guys don't last more than 2 years on campus. Obviously, Anthony Richardson was the exception, and even going back to Emory Jones. But I mean, dating back to the spring of 2022, Florida's lost 3 scholarship quarterbacks now, and a 4th that was signed in Jaden Rashada. So that's a lot of attrition at the most important position on your team. So fortunately for the Gators, they're set for the short term and for the long term. But for depth purposes, they're going to have to address that, I think, here in the coming months. So before we get to our next topic, I want to give a shout out to My Perfect Franchise. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. Andy's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. Now, Graham, of course, was not the only player news this week, not only on the NFL draft front, but also on the transfer front as well. Cam Jackson announced that he will also be returning to UF for the 2024 season, despite getting invitations from both the Reese's Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine Bowl. So Gators got him back, and he don't even have a position coach. So, I mean, maybe a little message maybe that Billy sent to Cam of maybe he knows who his defensive line coach is going to be and gave him a little heads up. Maybe he told him it'll be an NFL defensive line coach that'll be coaching you, and you're just going to have to wait to see. But he got Cam Jackson back. I think that's obviously very big for Florida's defense. And Kingslee Agwakin has already accepted his East-West Shrine Bowl invitation. Billy Napier said that he's moving on to the next level during the last week of the season. So now we wait on a few more junior decisions, as well as a bunch of guys who are on transfer portal watch. As we record this episode Thursday night, there have been 9 total players from the 2023 roster who have either announced or have been reported that they're going to be entering the transfer portal, which opens on Monday. 9 total players as of Thursday night that have either announced or been reported to be entering the transfer portal. And right now, Nick, the Gators currently have 69 players on scholarship.
Nice.
And they still have some more, obviously, movement to get under 85 once you account for the 19 commits that they have for the 2024 class. There'll probably be a few more. There's going to be some transfer portal additions that they add. So they still need to get down on their numbers, which they will. There's going to be a few more draft decisions, like we said, and then Nick, probably at least a half dozen or so players that we're monitoring, probably none more so than Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, that's going to be the one. Obviously, Trevor Etienne, a huge part of the Florida offense, of Florida's future, Florida's 2024 team. You need to have him back. What will Montrell Johnson do with his decision? Does he go pro? Does he come back? Cam Carroll intends to come back. You've got Trayon Webb. You've got someone signed. Like, could be a very deep running back room. I don't think a lot of people are like, is it because he's sharing carries? And when I look at the NFL doesn't care about the running back position. So like you don't need to like Trevor Etienne has proved he can run. I think he needs to prove he can pass block. He doesn't need 250 carries next year to show the NFL he can run the football. And all that's going to do is put more wear and tear on your body before you get to the NFL where they don't value your position. Mamas and dads out there, if you got a son, don't let him play running back. The NFL don't care about them boys anymore. So no, I don't think Montreal coming back or leaving one way or the other affects Trevor Etienne. I think it's about Florida's offensive line, Florida's realistic championship potential next year, which I don't think there is one.
Well, I think that's it right there, though. From some of the discussions I've had, I think one factor here is the opportunity to have some success next season as a team and be part of a program that's going to have a chance to have a good season. And I think that's something or one of the factors that's important to Trevor. And after experiencing a 6-7 season and a 5-7 season, I think that's something that's important to him or that is factoring into his decision. And at least now being able to know that, okay, Graham Mertz is coming back in a few more days. I think some of these roster moves are going to shake out and he's going to have an idea of what Florida is going to look like. But if Graham Mertz is coming back, Eugene Wilson is coming back, a couple other pieces on offense are coming back along with what they're going to add. Maybe they can sell Trevor on what the potential is for next year and how Florida can be better. And especially on the offensive side, we still don't know what's going to happen on that side of the ball. We'll get to some of the staff changes after we talk to Tate, but we still don't know what's going to happen on that side of the ball. Will Billy continue to call plays? Will there be a new play caller out there that's available that he wants to go and hire? How does that impact Trevor? How does that impact the offense? There's a lot to weigh here. And if you're subscribed to Gators Online, you know where things stand with Trevor right now. If you're on the Swamp Talk message board for him. Yeah, and just addressing Jim, I'm going to try to address some comments that we get because the chat's popping off. But like, I would bet you that Trevor Etienne doesn't know who Seton is. No, and like I think there's just a view of like Seton will come in and start and make Florida's offensive line better right away, and like maybe. And every time I say that I don't like or don't think that offensive linemen play right away and play well right away, like the same 7 names get thrown at me when there's 800 offensive linemen that sign Division I scholarships every year. And I'm like, all right, cool. You're throwing the exceptions to the rule at me. And Seton might be the exception to the rule, but Trevor Etienne's not making his decision on staying at Florida based on what an 18-year-old kid in high school is doing. No. If anything, he's making his decision based on maybe what some 21 and 22-year-old offensive linemen are deciding from the portal. But those are where the Gators are going to have to look for some impact additions. So obviously he's one of the major names that we're monitoring. Some other guys I think are to be expected as candidates just based on their playing time, where they're at in their careers, how many years of eligibility that they have left, where they kind of stand on the depth chart, and if they can find potentially a better opportunity for playing time. Those are some of the guys that I think we expect to test the waters on the transfer market. So again, 9 guys at this time. Maybe by the time you guys are listening to this on Friday or on the weekend, that number will be in double digits. And whether it is or not, by the time you listen to it, that number will reach double digits. And listen, right now, everyone is like all these announcements. The portal's not open unless like DJ Ugalele. I've never been able to say his name. DJU. His coach left. So if your coach leaves, you've got time. You can go into the portal, or if you graduated already, you can go into the portal. Everyone else has like bought a plane ticket and is letting you know that like, hey, I bought a plane ticket for Monday and my flight leaves on Monday, but like they're still here.
So like when Zach says, hey, Florida's at 69 scholarships, like they're not there yet, but we're doing the math for you so that when that plane does take off, that they have their ticket for, that they announced, hey, I purchased this ticket to get out of Gainesville. We're doing the math for you now.
And speaking of the math, another factor into that equation is the guys that walked on senior day that still have eligibility left and that are not NFL draft decisions, but are just deciding whether to come back to school for their final year at Florida, whether to go somewhere else and play. There's several guys that I think we're monitoring. Jalen Humphreys, Keon Zipper, Jalen Kimber. These are all guys that took part in the senior day ceremony. They still have eligibility left. They haven't announced their official plan. So a lot of movement still to be had on Florida's roster before we, really have a sense for where they're at number-wise and also what some of their biggest needs are. Now, some are obvious: offensive line, defensive line, edge. But I think what happens maybe in the secondary with guys like Jason Marshall, with guys like Jaden Hill, that could determine, how many defensive backs Florida goes after in the portal and what are some of their priorities there. So it's going to be no shortage of news, Nick, over the next few days. The transfer portal officially opens on December 4th, and closes after 30 days on January 2nd, 2024.
For any of the Gators players in the college football playoff or that were still playing had bowl games on January 2nd, they get another week after their season ends. So I know we always get that question. It's like, how did the portal close Tuesday? Why is there a name out on Thursday? Well, also like that you have until January 2nd for like a guy on Florida's team to enter your name. And then once you're in the portal, you can be recruited whenever, but it's that. So that 30 days is to enter yourself into the transfer portal.
Anybody surprise you yet that has entered the portal for Florida? Most of them, I think, were to be expected, but I mean, Caleb Douglas, Max Brown.
Caleb Douglas a little bit. I wondered with Caleb Douglas is, I think I put it on the message board during the year. I wonder with Caleb Douglas, like, how bad was that injury? Because you missed the last 7 games.
Yeah, it was only supposed to be 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and you got hurt, versus Kentucky? So you had a bye week there. It was only supposed to be 4 to 6. You missed 9. So that was questionable. I think that might be the only one that kind of catches me off guard. When I look at Florida and I put out what the 3 positions where I think Florida really needs to get better in the portal, one of them, it was offensive playmaker, whether that's tight end, running back, receiver. There's 4 dudes on Florida's offense that a defensive coordinator would have to worry about. That's it. And 2 of them run behind an offensive line that didn't play well. So the offensive line could, by themselves, eliminate half of the guys you were worrying about. And the draft is eliminating one of them. So, like, Florida has Eugene Wilson, maybe Montreal Johnson, maybe Trevor Etienne coming back. And, again, it's still the same offensive line unless you can find something in the portal. But let me say it loud and clear. Portal offensive linemen, you're not shopping at Neiman Marcus. We're at Dollar General most of the times. Elite offensive tackles go to elite programs, play elite level football for 3 years, and then go to the NFL. Like, no one was really that upset when Michael Tarquin left last year, and he was probably the best and most experienced offensive tackle, or in the top 3 or 4, to leave. So there's just to expect that Florida is going to go and get 6 new offensive linemen who are all going to end up all SEC type of guys in the transfer portal. I don't know that you're going to get that. You're going to have to develop some of the guys you have on your team this year and find a couple of other pieces.
Outside of Trevor Etienne, because he's the obvious, one player on offense and one player on defense that Florida cannot afford to lose in the transfer portal.
Eugene Wilson on offense. On defense, probably Shamar James,
Yep.
who has flirted with the portal almost every time the portals come up, or at least rumored to have been flirting with the portal every time the portals come up.
Yeah. If anything, I tell you what, I don't know if fans will like this, but I'd even rank Eugene number 1 over Trevor.
Yeah.
Because if Trevor leaves, you still have a chance to have Montrell back. And but if Eugene Wilson leaves, that's it. Like there's nobody else that even comes close to that guy at the receiver position. So yeah, he'd be my number 1. Obviously, I think Shamar on defense. I would maybe even throw Kelby Collins or TJ Searcy in there. Yeah. I think maybe even Searcy because he's got a chance to start next season if Princely Uman turns pro. So got to keep those guys. Well, we got a special guest.
Hey, if Eugene Wilson leaves, if Arlis Boardingham leaves, might have to get Kate Tacey another jersey. Get him lined up for some Oklahoma drills. Don't worry, Tate. There's no 2-a-days anymore. It'll be easy on you.
Does he have any eligibility left?
Sure.
Got a year of baseball left.
Oh,
test it out.
Well, we are now joined by former Florida tight end and UF sideline reporter Tate Casey. Appreciate you joining us, man. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Just appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely, man.
Real quick, for everyone watching here on YouTube, what is that trophy in the back?
Oh, that guy right there.
Yeah.
That's the Long Balls Cup 2023.
Oh.
That was brought home by the team captain this year. So a couple of former Gators and a couple other guys that we're friends with do a trip every year. So it your typical guy's golf trip. It adjusts every year, one place to the next. So
looks like there was probably an adult beverage or two poured into that and consumed from that trophy.
There was multiple. Actually, that's the best part about it. It holds quite a bit. I'll be the first one to tell you.
More than your wife's Stanley Cup.
What? It's arguable. Stanley mugs are pretty big, brother.
Yeah.
Tate, you finally get a Saturday to be at home this weekend. I know you would have much rather been in Atlanta. But man, now you get to kind of take a step back away from this 2023 season. Obviously, we'll dig in here. But just kind of your overall thoughts on the year and what you got to see from the sidelines this season.
Well, obviously a rough year. You know, it's one of those that you don't necessarily want to walk away from and say that's about what we expected. But I know that there was some speculation about this team being able to pull over 6, 7, 8 win season. Unfortunately, I was one of those that thought an 8-win season was pretty achievable with the crew that we had. And you saw flashes of it at times. You know, there was plenty of good things in this season, especially when you talk about young players and their ability to have some clutch moments. You know, I heard you guys talking about, Shamar. And when you look at that defense, I mean, there was at times 9 players on the field that were freshman, sophomore. And so I think that's one thing that gives you hope. Unfortunately, as Gator fans, we're used to having great defense. And I think in the last 4 years, that's probably one of the most dumbfounding things about our seasons when you walk away from them. It took us years to finally have a quarterback we felt comfortable about winning games. And that's about when we had our defense start to break down a little bit. And I think if you look at Gator fans, Kyle Trask was like, okay, this is it. Everybody get ready. And it's the first time we've had a defense that was probably outside of the top 25 in a number of categories in a long time. So, for me, I think this year I can see a lot of really good things, right? I see a lot of good buy-in. I don't think we're quite there yet from the buy-in perspective, but I see a lot of good things in that locker room. And the one thing that I did see was after losses, you saw a lot of fight. Right. And it sounds cliche. It sounds like one of those things coaches lean on sometimes. But as somebody who's kind of been in the trenches in certain moments like that, you find out a lot about yourself as a team. And the good thing is I think a lot of those players looked around the locker room this year and saw a complete difference in what last year may have shown them after a loss. So That's one thing that stands out to me. I don't think anybody's content, satisfied with it. There's a lot of work to do.
I get a lot. So I kept saying all year the best players on the team are guys that have been brought in by this staff. And then towards the end of the year, people were saying, well, they aren't freshmen anymore because they've played 10 games. And my thought process was, yeah, but they've also never played this long of a season. All of those guys were here in January and had to go through spring and fall. And now they're playing against they were seniors playing against 16, 17-year-olds, the guys their age. Now they're playing because of COVID against, in some cases, 24-year-old men who have no business playing college football anymore. Is there anything to my thought process there? Like, hey, we're just seeing some guys throwing arm tackles out now. Like they're beat up, they're beat down. I think you should get better mentally as the season goes on, but also mentally, hey, I'm worn out. Like this is long. This is a long, hard season.
Well, unfortunately, we're in a nobody cares world, bud.
Okay.
This is college football.
Yeah.
Right? And for as much complaining as you may want to give as a player about how banged up you are, how rough the season is. Listen, we used to think about it as a team as like there was a lot of guys that came before us that had it a hell of a lot worse. And I think that's the best mindset refresh we ever had. And this is just my personal opinion. Urban came in and scrammed. You're not wearing Gator gear. You're not getting Gator gear. You guys
didn't even have a stripe on the helmet. It was just a plain orange helmet.
And he brought that in camp. But for me, it was like, wear your own clothes for, until I tell you otherwise. And they put us in the visiting locker room, the tin can. And it was like, you guys don't even understand how good you have it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was twofold, right? One was the mindset and the mentality of earning it. And the other was the fact that, like, people don't care. They don't want excuses. And me as a coach, I understand that. I don't want excuses, and I'm not going to give any, but we're going to do it the hardest way possible. Mm-hmm. That means when you woke up in the morning, you knew damn well nobody was out working you, right? When you went to bed that night, you knew there was nobody out working you for that day. And that way, when the season come around, it was easy, right? So, like, we can talk about stats from 23 all we want. We can talk about how young we were all we want. And I'm a culprit of that because we are young. But nobody cares. We have to find a way to win games in order to get us back to where we were, right? In order to win championships, you got to find a way to do something that nobody else – you're not going to be outworked. The mindset's not going to be a better mindset than yours. The excuses – pardon my French, the excuses shit's got to go out the door. And we're going to find a way to win championships in January. And the sooner we realize that championships are won in January, the better off we're going to be.
But that's one thing everyone from your era always –
excuses and all the other stuff about we need to fire this guy and that guy. Cut the shit. Like, I hate to say it, but it's driving me nuts. Like, it has nothing to do with it, right? There's a process. There's a coach that we hired that's got a plan in place that he thinks works. And I honestly think we've got it in the locker room if the mindset is in the right place, especially when we bring in some of these younger guys and can continue to develop. My biggest thing for Billy is we got to hit the portal because we're going to need some good veteran presence. You're going to need some leadership that's had snaps in the NCAA at a high level. And you got to find some guys that have started some football games that have something about them, right? It can't be like, well, yeah, well, we got to just get all that out. And people right now don't realize we need to make space and get rid of some of that in order to bring in those kind of guys. But we're not quite there yet. And I'll be the first to say it. I've got a lot of faith in this team, though. The locker room, to me, it's there. They just have to realize it. And that starts with a hard look in the mirror if you're a player.
That's one thing. I'll make this quick, Zach. That's one thing guys from your era always say is that what we did in January through August made September through December, November easy. Like Major used to tell me all the time. He's like, dude, the Saturdays were the easy part. He's like, Bloody Tuesday was harder than anything we did on Saturday.
You couldn't. This come from an offensive guy, so I don't know. Defense probably feels the same way because they're going up against Pouncey's and everybody else in the world. You couldn't put a defense in front of us that was better than what we saw Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And our mindset was like, I mean, there was fights. Like, get me wrong, like you could be opposed to fighting your own teammates or whatever. The internal policing and the leadership of the locker room that we had in 06 and 08 is the reason we won championships. I'd be hard-pressed to find Urban disagreeing with that. Now, granted, he set the tone and the coaching staff set the tone, but you weren't going to find anybody that outworked us. You weren't going to find anybody that had the right mentality better than us. And if we had the wrong mentality internally, somebody from our team was going to let you know that ain't the way we do things.
Mm-hmm. How would that message be sent, Tate? With that, like a text message?
Didn't matter.
Was that
nose to nose text
email?
Message? It doesn't matter. You believe me, if it was wrong, you found out about it quick.
Mm-hmm.
It probably not a text message, because before you got out of the facility, somebody's gonna let you know about it.
Tate, you've talked or alluded to some of the locker room scenes after games this season, and just seeing some progress there. Can you expand on that a little bit, and specifically maybe what some of those locker rooms look like after losses in 2021 and in 2022, just in terms of the finger pointing, some of the clicks and stuff, placing blame. Whereas this year, from what I understand, after the games and some of these losses, it was a totally different scene. Some guys were emotional. You had leaders that were kind of going over to different sections of the locker room trying to console players. It seemed like a change from what we'd seen in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I don't want to create the assumption that pointing fingers is the right term for it. For me, at least. I mean, if you've heard otherwise from somebody else, it's different. I don't think anybody's really, even in 21, 22, just for clarity, I don't think I saw too much of pointing fingers. You may have had some disgruntled guys that were starters that, had their opinions on why games were lost, but not necessarily, hey, you need to do a better job. I don't want to give the impression that there was tension from players to players type thing. It's just you lose games. I'll be honest. It's a passionate game.
Yeah.
Right. Football will draw every emotion out of you. You lose games, you're going to be pissed off. Some guys are going to be criers. Right. I'm not one to walk away from a game and just bawl my eyes out, but I've had teammates that were criers. It's that way. But everybody has their way of dealing with that emotion, right? And if it doesn't piss you off or spark some kind of emotion, this probably isn't the program for you, because it should matter to you, right? If you lose a game and walk away and you got no problem going and laughing about it, there's about 80 other guys that should have a huge problem with that if we're doing it right. So I will say, last year to this year, the maturity, especially for being a young team, the maturity, I think, is noticeable, right? And I'm fortunate enough to have conversations with guys that are willing to talk after a loss, doing post-game interviews. And I think that I had a handful of guys, that are pretty routine. I talked to Ricky a lot, talked to Graham a lot, talked to Trevor a lot, talked quite a bit with Marshall. I think I've seen 5 or 6, 7 guys that I see pretty regularly post game, and then some, new blood here and there. And the difference is, it's just the maturity level and the accountability. And when you look at that, especially the young, youthful nature of our team, the more maturity you start to see is a promising thing, right? Because it's very hard to adjust your mindset as an 18, 19, 20-year-old in this game and be mature about it. And it's even harder now. When you talk about Twitter and some of the other things that these players have to deal with, I can't imagine having to hear some of the things these guys hear on social media. Yeah. And of course, I see it now, but I'm like, I don't know how to handle that when I was 18, 19, 20. I'd be pretty pissed off about some of the things you see here online. Some of it may, as a player, you may feel it's warranted because, we lost and, a bunch of people have something to say about it. But it's a lot to deal with. I could just say the maturity level to me and what I see has been a great, turnaround this year from last year.
What would social media have done to that team, those teams you were on?
It depends. From the photos that you have instantly to, I don't know. I will say, our celebrations on Saturday would have been way more visible, I guess. Would be the
Oh man,
just,
Midtown would have been
yeah,
the videos
Grog
of you
House
guys at
excess would have
Grog.
been on fire. I mean, if Tim would have texted me and said he was going to be downtown at Bank and I put it on Facebook, you wouldn't have been able to shut down traffic quick enough. I mean, it's a whole new world, right? And you can get into the portal and you can get into NIL. And the number one advice I'd give to high school guys coming out now is, and I personally think that the reason the portal is so overloaded right now is truly because guys make the wrong decision out of high school. They chase the NIL factor. They chase a lot of the other things that probably have not taken into account their best interests. You see them going back into the portal in a year or two because in their mind, it's like, oh, crap, well, now I'm not getting playing time, but I had this NIL deal. The game really means something to me, right? My advice to high school guys is, man, literally go with your heart. And it's cliche as possible. But, like, you can't make this kind of decision for the wrong reasons. And especially as it expanded now, the portal, I think today at like 5,600 players in the portal.
5,784.
Some of those guys aren't going to get brought in by a team.
Yeah.
Right. And at what point as a player are you willing to really risk that for maybe 1 year worth of NIL money or 1 year worth of like a coach selling you a pipe dream of, boosting their star value and getting that class? Like, if you're a Pitt type of player and you've got somebody coming after you that's a little bit high profile and they just, they're offering you a little bit of money, but your best route to the NFL and your best route to having legitimate experience playing college football is Pitt or whoever the example is.
Yeah.
Take that. And I don't think players really comprehend that. And that's the world we live in, because right now youth sports is all about how much your parents are willing to pay to put you on a team. Like, get all that out. Like, find a way to get back to the ball. Like, play because you love the game and take the rest of it out.
No doubt. No doubt. Tata, I do obviously want to ask you about the tight end position. We got to see Arliss emerge this year and some other guys get their opportunities. What did you think about how that position seemingly got more involved in the offense this year, and also, the job Russ Callaway's doing there because he's got a lot of young guys at that spot?
Yeah, man, I like Hayden Hansen kind of came along a little bit over the season too. When you look at Arliss and Hayden, the two things that stand out to me is, one, they're both pretty good blockers, from a line of scrimmage point of view. I think there's some athletic things that you can do with them that maybe a bigger tight end is not going to be able to accomplish, but you can get them out on the perimeter. You can slide Arliss and Hayden both really out in the slot and get them out as a big body blocking for the outside run. So it's awesome to see, man. You know me. I'm biased. I like seeing good tight end play. There's nothing more I like seeing than athletic tight end play, and not just catching footballs. I think when you get guys that are truly invested in the blocking scheme and finding ways to get the run game going, that's awesome to me, because that's kind of where I made my living. At the time was as a hybrid tight end who can get around on safeties, linebackers, and DBs, and then also be on the ball tight end.
How do you see those guys? I mean, Arliss was a track guy and a receiver in high school. Hayden was a quarterback in high school. How do you see them? Because it's not just a willingness. You have to be willing to block that edge guy or that 290-pound nasty defensive end. You have to be willing to do it, but you also I could be willing to do it, but I don't know how to do it. So you have to put the time in and have the footwork, handwork, technique as well. How do you see them progressing?
I think they'll be fine, but two things: those 290-pound defensive ends kind of grow on trees in the SEC. They're always
around.
They're always around. I think that, and I say this because Arliss and Hayden are both young guys, right? And Arliss being a freshman, I can relate to that. Luckily for him, his freshman season was blocking and catching. Right, I was a stream bean. They were like, "Hey, it's a pass play, go in." For me, it was like, we're not really letting it. But I think I had 5 a handful blocking.
It might have been like it was a check. It was a check into a run play. And
I'll
you're
tell
like,
you what, I was
no.
praying it was a check. I think the LSU, the first semblance of really big time game plays that I got was LSU freshman year in the swamp. When it was my first catch of college at UF was a touchdown. It was against LSU. But my first block, like significant, had to block somebody, was Marcus Spears. And I thought that was bad until, I can't remember which one came first, but I had David Pollock one game. And I was like, oh, God, like call a check. Can we audible? Give me a backside block, a little scoop block. I'll take care of
Tate's
that.
getting up and going, timeout? They're like, you can't call timeout, Tate. The coach has to. You're like, no, but timeout.
Luckily for Arliss, he's one of those guys got a little build to him. Hayden, he probably looks like I did when I left. He's not like I was as a freshman, 202 and, soaking wet with shoes and pads and everything else on.
Yeah, man. And they got another stud coming in, Amir Jackson. I think it's going to give them even more talent at that position.
Don't get me started on what could possibly happen in the next 3 months. I mean, Florida's got a chance. Listen, I think the mindset's right. I think we've got a lot of good things about it, contrary to what you may see on Twitter. Just from seeing these guys work, seeing these guys talk, how they look at each other's teammates, I think there's a lot to be positive about. But that being said, we've got to close out a class, and we've got to close out some portal guys, and we've got to continue in the right direction. I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis placed in January, February, March. That's going to tell me a lot about where we're at as a program. That's going to tell me a lot about when the spring game comes around. I've got to see a completely different team than what we saw a week ago. And I think that leadership is probably 80% of that with this team. That's why it's great to see Graham coming back, because I think if you could take a handful of guys off of this year's team, Graham and Ricky Pearsall, probably the two mindsets you're going to want to take away that type of leadership.
Yeah.
Shamar coming back is going to help. I think Cam Jackson coming back with that announced today is going to be a huge deal for us. But, man, think about all the young guys you finally got with playing time as freshmen this year that are, especially if they're not afraid to be vocal, that are going to be a focal point of this team in the next 3 years in way better times than what we've seen in the last 3.
Yeah. And then final thing for you, Tate, obviously don't want to make this comparison in terms of the group, because that group of players was extremely talented in terms of the guys that ended up in the NFL. But I think Florida fans might hope that there is some similarities between
DB group,
what we saw with that 07 defense, and then how it looked in 08, and then the growing pains that this year's unit went through with so many freshmen and sophomores. What were the keys to that unit back in the day, kind of taking that jump in 08, and what does this year's group need to do to have some similar trajectory?
Well, I think that you can draw some similarities. I will say they're going to be a couple of completely different things, right? Because when you talk about the 06 Gators on defense, right, you're talking about a lunch pail crew, right? We're talking blue collar, the chip on the shoulder. There was a lot of people that didn't give that defense the time of day. Channing Crowder's gone after 04. Channing Crowder's gone. Travis Harris is gone. All these guys that left, there's no way Florida's defense is going to win them games. And that's what we were known for, was defense, right? And I think that when you look at Earl Everett, Brian Crum, Todd McCullough, right?
Yeah.
Joe Cohen, Trap Harris. I mean,
Ray McDonald.
Ray McDonald. And I'm going to tell you what, Billy's never going to listen to this. This podcast, he may watch y'all's show. I don't know. He's never going to. If you want an example, I've got a lot of really good teammate stories over the years on guys who just completely, you don't see it until after it happens and you're like, holy shit, what just happened? You want the best, probably one of the best stories of a guy who completely went 180. And I'm trying to think of an equivalent on our team, doesn't really matter. But I'm talking a guy where maybe the season prior, people were fed up with, wanted him out, or like just was dogging him from the sidelines. And if you go look at Ray McDonald's transition, and I'm talking a guy who had, I want to say 2 or 3 ACL surgeries, man. He had like every reason to have an excuse to decline as a player.
Yeah.
If you want to see the absolute greatest transition, in my opinion, from one season to the next, and I'm talking mentality and mentality alone, a guy who chased the ball from snap to finish, that didn't happen the year prior. If you go back and look at Ray McDonald from 04 to 05, 05 to 06, pound for pound, one of the best players I ever played with, pound for pound, awesome guy, I love him to death. But, man, you watch him on film in 06 versus 05 and 04. It's somebody, the mentality was bought in and tweaked by Urban. And I'm not saying he did it because of Urban. I'm saying Urban shifted the mindset in the whole program, and that is one player who actually took a look in the mirror, decided exactly what he was going to do the next year or two with his life that was going to adjust where he's going. And Ray McDonald's one of those guys. And there's 30 to 40 examples like that on those teams that you can look towards that guys actually.
I remember, Major Wright, man, in 2007, fans couldn't stand the guy. And look what he became.
I mean, here's another one that drives me and a little bit closer to where we're at now, but Chauncey Gardner.
Yeah.
Chauncey Johnson was one of those guys that his sophomore year, people wanted him out of the program.
Yep. Yeah.
You can sit here, and he missed a lot of tackles, and I'll be the first person to tell you, he was a young guy playing. He missed some tackles.
He was also out of position too.
Turned around, right? And the next year you go, hold on a second, that's the same guy that we had last year. And then the next year, now the guy's in a league. He's one of the best slot, nickel, whatever you want to call him, in the NFL. And he's a dog. So I take it with a grain of salt. Everything you want to read on Twitter, this is out to the fans. If you want to read stuff on Twitter, I get it, but be cautious of whose advice you're taking and who you're trusting with that stuff. Half the people on Twitter, it drives me nuts sometimes from a fan base perspective, because you got recruits that are open to it, you got players that are open to it, now you got portal guys that are open to it. So,
who should they listen to and trust, Tate?
Listen, there's a number of places they can trust material. It's not just me or anybody else that
Tate, just fishing for a compliment.
Guys
just need you to say Nick and Zach, Tate. We're going on way too long now.
No, I don't need a
just need to click that. Just need to click that soundbite, Tate. That's all I was looking for.
He conveniently froze up right when you needed it.
No. I paused Tate's. I started a DDoS attack on Tate's house when he started going off, and thought he might say another website. Just needed Tate to say Gators Online. I think we're losing.
Yeah, now we've officially lost. So what is your schedule look like now that you're done with football, man? You get your weekends back?
It's kind of nice. So you got a lot. I mean, December's always busy for us. My daughter's birthday's this month, and work fiscal ended today, and ended November. It's usually like I get a long, stressful year of work, and it ends in November, and then at least I've got a bowl game to look forward to, and me and Christina always go to the bowl game, and now it's like, shoot, I guess I got to get the handicap down. I got a chance to get on the course a little bit. That's the benefit of playing in Florida.
Well, right. I saw a video you posted. Your daughter's golf swing looks better than yours.
Stud. And you hadn't seen mine. That's the bad thing. She
can swing it.
Mine ain't bad. She's a stud. I don't try and hype up a 7-year-old too much, but there's a handful of things that you may be naturally good at in life, and usually golf isn't one for most people. She was a naturally gifted golfer first time around. Took her out, got her some lessons, and man, she's cranking right now.
She must get it from her mom.
Mom's golf swing's pretty ugly. The only thing I can diss when it comes to the wife, but no, she got some athletic. I'll tell you what, she's got some competitive DNA, because Christina's competitive, I'm competitive, and she's one of those that she hates to lose. So golf is one of those sports you got to kind of pull her back in mentally and say, hey, everybody's terrible at this game. You're 7. Like you've got 40 years till you can perfect this.
Yeah. And listen, everyone's bad at this game.
That's exactly
the guys who are making millions of dollars will go out and tell you that they had a bad round, and now their bad round Looks a lot different. It has a lot less strokes than mine.
You want a really good read. This guy right
Foundations of Golf.
This guy right here will let you know maybe your perception of tour golfers is how good they are because you see the good shots. But that book right there is amazing to really put some expectations on your golf game.
That's awesome. Well, Tate, really great catching up with you, man. It was fun running into you on the sidelines all season, man. Wish it would have been under better results. But we'll be back at it next fall, man.
All right, man. Looking forward to it. Hopefully we're talking about a completely different tune.
No doubt,
appreciate
man.
you, Tate. Thanks, bud.
Enjoy your off season, bud. We'll
Appreciate
see you
it,
soon,
guys.
man.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. Tate Casey, former Florida tight end and UF sideline analyst. And great stuff from him and perspective as he's obviously got a unique background and got to be great for him now to be able to come back and kind of be on the sidelines and get to experience the game and his program from that perspective. So,
yeah, I wonder, guys from that era, like, I don't know that you could, watching Swamp Kings, I don't know that you can run a program like that right now with NIL and the transfer portal. You know what I mean? Like, would Brandon Spikes have stuck around in Swamp Kings? Brandon Spikes is like, yo, I came and they were training us for like war. Like this is boot camp. I didn't sign up for this. Like if the transfer portal was around, could Brandon Spikes have seen what Florida was doing in the weight room and been like, no, thanks, I'm out. Like, I don't know if you can do that like that. So to me, it's
interesting. But then Brandon Spikes never becomes the Brandon Spikes he became.
Yeah. The grass isn't always greener. Sometimes you got to suck it up and do the work. I do wonder, though, those guys have such a different mentality. I mean, we're going into the Florida State week, and I know it's hate week, and people are finding all this kind of stuff. Like, how many dancing TikToks did Florida State's players put up? Like, that would never happen in their day. So to hear what the perspective of former players, guys who were in that locker room, Tate Casey, Brandon Spikes, what their perception is of a totally different generation of young man, of young people in a locker room, what their perception is. Because I think if that locker room was fake or if that locker room was soft, I don't know that guys like Tate or Brandon Spikes would be able to sit here, and lie to us through clenched teeth and tell us otherwise.
No doubt. Yeah, it was interesting to get his perspective, and obviously I got to see him on the sidelines this season, and man, when things are humming, Tate gets pretty pumped.
Tate's going. Tate's going. Man. Like a long touchdown play, you can catch Tate holding to his like mic pack, holding his mic, but sprinting down the field.
Yeah, no, it's a fun sight to see, man. It's obviously a cool job for him. So before we get into this last segment, I want to encourage all Florida fans to go and visit rogueshop.com if you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress. Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, and more. Rogue Shop is a true small business. They have 5 employees and make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. And last but certainly not least, we've got to discuss some staff changes that were made in Gainesville this week. 2 on the defensive side of the ball, and at least up until this point, 1 change on the support staff that we've learned of as of Thursday. But Nick, the news broke late Monday night that on the defensive side of the ball, Billy has decided to part ways with defensive line coach and co-defensive coordinator Sean Spencer, as well as secondary coach Corey Raymond. I think the former was expected, the latter not so much. And now we are on D-line coach and DB coach watch.
Fire up the flight
Hot
tracker
boards,
threads, baby.
Yeah.
Fire up the flight tracker threads. We have got some aviation enthusiasts at Gators Online. They do the work really for us, Zach. Like, my goodness, it's just like they're like, hey, here's all the planes, here's where they are every day, every minute up to the minute.
Shout out to my airport plug.
Shout out to the airport plugs. Shout out to TSA at Gainesville Regional. Got to get the plug out in
listen, I've got a guy.
We need a guy at MCO. We need a guy at Tampa. We need a guy in Jax. Now, listen, Scott, if you're going to drive up to Scott and Billy, if you're going to drive up to Atlanta to then fly to Atlanta, that's fine. You can have that one. But we're gonna reach out to all of the regional airports and international airports around us. But get back to it. I think Sean Spencer's dismissal surprised me, just in the sense that his contract ran out in January 31st. So you have a bunch of guys who it could affect recruiting wise. And I thought, okay, well, if you weren't going to retain him, you can just say, hey, you should find a new job. We're not going to renew your contract, and we're going to start looking for somebody to replace you. But you're going to work your contract until January 31st. And he would have done that. He's a pro. That stuff happens all the time throughout college football. The Corey Raymond one, to me, I think Corey, the whole Cormani McClain recruiting process last year kind of opened his eyes to what recruiting is now. Like, Corey is a great technician, great teacher, but also was a great recruiter, and recruiting's not the same. He builds relationships with mom, dad, uncle, brother, sister, whoever it is, whoever's going to help make the decision, make that call. And now it doesn't matter, because it's a lot, in a lot of cases, it's just money. Like, how much money can you and your program give me? And I do love you, Coach Raymond, but so-and-so is giving me $25K more. So can you match that? Because I would love to play for you.
Yeah, and it is, I think, got to be also for Raymond. I mean, he was a guy from a popularity standpoint, like, his name and reputation
alone. It's wild. A decade. We waited for a decade through like 3 different coaches, different DB coaches. Went through a year with Kirk Callahan, and every year the DB hot board was Corey Raymond, and now you get him, and it's like 2 years and later out.
Yeah, it's you didn't really get to get the benefit of that, and it'll be interesting to see what direction Billy goes. There's a lot of candidates out there along the D line and along the secondary. We've highlighted both of them at Gators Online with our hot board. Encourage you guys to go check those out. We will continue to update those as well as we
got 2
learn
more
of new
names
candidates.
to put out tomorrow morning, Zach.
What's that?
I'll have 2 more names to put out tomorrow morning.
Oh, so we got a new D line hot board coming. So
DBs for your board. We got another 2 more DB names.
So I know of one of them. You got another one you're giving me. All right.
I do. That'll be off air. Listen, we can't give away everything on YouTube. It only costs $1 to join it. Gators Online, though.
And then if you didn't see, I do want to mention, because I know a lot of fans have questions about off the field staff as well, and what changes Billy can make there. He has reportedly decided to make a change with the head nutritionist. And now we wait to see if anything else shakes out between support staffers, if there's any other changes, either to, if not assistant coaches, maybe some of the staff structure, specifically with special teams. So yes, Nick did just drop a nugget on live stream, Perry.
Shout out to Perry.
But now we kind of wait to see what happens next. What are your expectations, Nick? For any more movement in the Army?
I think that I said that Corey Raymond, I think there were some issues there. I also don't know that he liked or got along or fit schematically with Austin Armstrong or Patrick Toney. Both of them are cut from the same cloth in terms of where they learned football. So that didn't surprise me. I think getting those moves at the timing that they did, I think that's Billy saying to Austin, like, listen, man, this is your defense. We hired you. You weren't able to. You didn't hire any of these guys. You can go get your guys in. Make the moves you think is necessary because our defense has to get better next year.
Mm-hmm.
Because Billy's not getting fired this year, but like if Florida goes 5-7 next year, I don't know that he'll keep his job. So you tell Austin Armstrong, hey, I trust you. Here are the keys to the defense. Put whatever new seats, upholstery. You want to put some subwoofers in there, that's cool. But make sure that thing runs and runs well.
Rob, you're gonna have to wait until Friday on Gators Online for that for those Nuggets.
Rob's a menace. A menace online.
Hotboard 3.0, my friend.
Yeah, Hotboard 3.0. Rob, if I see another meme, we might just have to like only send out the Hotboard to everyone except for Rob. Just don't screenshot it. Don't send it to Rob. Cut his internet off.
Well, that'll do it for this week's show. We appreciate you guys for joining on and commenting all night on the live stream. And definitely a huge shout out to Tate Casey for joining us, giving us his thoughts on the program, on the team, on the season this year, and where the Gators go from here. We will continue to monitor all of the movements with the roster, with the scholarship chart, transfer portal tracker. Make sure that you guys are subscribed and locked in to Gators Online because there's news around the clock, and we are staying on top of it. Graham Mertz back for 2024. Cam Jackson back. We're waiting on some more draft decisions, and we will stay on top of all of it at Gators Online. Nick, we get to have a weekend to ourselves. Watch a little SEC championship. Watch some other conference championships.
I'm tuning into Iowa, Michigan.
I'm watching it all.
Yes, watching it all.
I'm watching it all. Kicking my feet back. Tell the wife to figure out something with the girlfriends.
Hey, take the kids with you.
Yes, because we're kicking back and we're enjoying one of these Saturdays after a lot of work that we put in. But hey, we don't stop even though the season's over because this news is going to continue to keep going. College football playoff predictions, Nick?
I want to know what happens if Georgia loses to Alabama tomorrow.
They both go.
Because then Michigan's number 1, and you've got like 5 teams that can go into those last 3 spots.
They both go. SEC, baby.
Oh, watch the Zebras rigging the game tomorrow. Alabama's check cashes. Everyone gets in. I think I like Michigan. And it looks like Michigan's going to get like the hardest route. If Georgia wins, like if FSU sneaks in, Georgia will absolutely smoke FSU on their way to another national championship game. And then Michigan's got to deal with like Washington in that offense. But I like Michigan versus Georgia, and I'm going to take Michigan. I think it'll be their first championship since 97.
Now, if Alabama beats Georgia, they're automatically in your book?
If Alabama beats Georgia, I don't know. If Alabama beats Georgia, then Michigan's like going to have to face either Georgia or Alabama in the first game. So like either way, Michigan is like not cooked because I think Michigan's the best team in the country.
Do you put a 1-loss Alabama over Oregon, Ohio State,
an undefeated ACC champion, Florida State,
without its quarterback though,
without Jordan Travis? Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to watch. I can't wait to see it all play out. And I also can't wait to end this stream so Nick can tell me the other name that I need to include for my DB board tomorrow. So we're going to end this. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you guys stay locked to Gators Online. Again, you can get in the door for just $1. So take advantage of that because a lot of craziness is about to take place once the transfer portal opens on Monday. Thanks to Tate for joining us. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverdi.